Win. Hey guys, welcome to episode number 11 of the Batten MMA Show, only on Ace Podcast Nation. I'm your host, Sai. Here at Ace Podcast Nation, we have shows, content, interviews on all sorts of subjects. Too many to list, but we have live football show every Monday, 7:30. So this week we talked the coronavirus and the impact it's had on the football season, what to do with the season now. Should it be voided? Should it carry on? Should they rearrange it? There's all sorts of different connotations and ramifications from the Premier League all down to the non-league, and every team is just as important as the other. We also talked the Emiliano Sala investigation closing and a whole lot more. Then this Friday, we have the My Story episode number 2 with former Wales international, Arsenal and Cardiff City defender Reece Weston. What else have I had recently? And I've also did a recent episode of My Story with former WBO champion Robbie Regan. That will follow in the coming weeks. We've also got, hopefully, going to have Luke Shanks on, Jordan Vucinic of Cage Warriors, returning UFC fighter Modestas Bukash coming up in the next few months. Never mind some of the other names who I can't quite name yet, but I will say that they will be cannot miss for combat sports fans. So tonight we're talking UFC Brazil, which was yesterday night as we record this. It was a fun show, a bit strange with no fans, but good that we were able to still have the show and still watch it in these strange times. So joining me to break it all down, former Cage Warriors champion, MMA legend, Mr. Danny Batten. Welcome, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, you're right, sir. I'm all good.
I'm all right, man. It's weird, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
just it's some weird times.
Yes, yeah. It had a strange atmosphere, didn't it? This event, having no crowd there.
Yeah, it's a strange one because whilst in in MMA, maybe the fans aren't as involved in terms of how they maybe are in like a football match or something like that, where it's constant and it's chewing and throwing. It's just one of those things where without them, it's very, very noticeable. And like I said to you just off air, Michael Bisping at one point when he was doing an interview said, "Make some noise for the winner," and obviously just our habit, and there was no one there. However, I got to say, I really appreciate the fact that the show was still on. Obviously, we were planning to do our first watch along next Saturday for the UFC London card. That's been called off today, which is disappointing, but it's understandable. It's one of those things. I think if it weren't for the flight bans coming in and out of the US, I think it probably would have been on. They seem to be planning to keep it on, but with the flights the way they are, they've added the UK and Ireland to the other countries who cannot fly in and out of America. And obviously there's some American fighters on the card, and a lot of the staff and the people who put on these shows are based from America. So it's just unfortunate. I feel it's the fighters I feel for, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, what could you do? It's just such an unpredictable situation that we're in. Gutting for everyone around, fans and for the fighters. Absolutely gutting.
Yeah, hopefully they compensate the fighters. Obviously, these fighters have been through, a 13, 12-week fight camps.
Yeah.
In most cases, which, it takes time, and especially if you've got fighters who, are paying for it out of their own pocket, it can take a lot of time and money out of their days, out of their weeks. And, like you've got someone like Jack Marshman, he was returning from injury. It's a massive fight for Jack Shaw, who's obviously coming into his second fight in the UFC after an explosive debut. It's massive for these guys. Hopefully UFC compensates the fighters, and John Phillips as well, the same, coming back. I would like to think they'll compensate the fighters, and then, as soon as they physically can, they'll get, the UFC London card back on. At the moment, we have Cage Warriors 113, which is got an incredible main card. I think it's only 4 or 5 fights, but it's incredible stuff. It's very good. You've got Paddy the Baddy Pimblett fighting in the opening fight. You've got Mason Jones now fighting for the title. Luke Shanks fighting for a title. And then obviously you've got the main event, which is for the interim title. It's going to be, it'll be a short card, but it'll be got the makings of a sensational one.
Yeah. Each one of those fights looks like a very interesting matchup. So I'm sure we're going to get some interesting bouts.
Yeah. So just for everyone to know, obviously we were going to do the watch along initially on the Saturday for the UFC London. We were going to do the live watch along. We were going to start a bit early and talk the Cage Warriors show before that, because it's my son's birthday on the Friday. So obviously with the way things are, and because of my own health, I'm not planning on going very far and going to places where there's lots of people. So we are not going out for my son's birthday at the moment. So it's likely we're going to stay in and have a takeaway or whatever. So I think that we might be doing the watch along for the Cage Warriors show. So that'll be the main card. Starts at 9. We'll go on air about 8:30, 8:45. We'll sort of preview the fights, have a chat, and then we'll get into watching it. It should be a lot of fun. So I encourage you all to join us in the live chat and watch along with the fights. It's going to be some great stuff. Obviously, it's on UFC Fight Pass, so it's easy for people to access on mobile devices and whatnot. Yeah. So, what did you think overall of the last night's UFC Brazil show? Oh, actually, sorry, Dan. Before I go on to that, I missed out something. There is also the added thing that at the moment the Cage Warriors show is on as planned, as you know, as it is. The owner guy, I forget his name now. He said earlier today, but that might change if the government make a rule about public gatherings and the amount of people. But I think their sort of backup plan is to do it without fans. But at the moment, it is on with the fans. In Cardiff tonight, there's a Stereophonics gig with like 20,000 fans. So, you know, things are still happening. I don't, in my opinion, maybe it's because I'm slightly like I've got this immune system thing, which makes me a bit higher risk. I think it's a bad idea to keep having these huge gatherings of people. I just think it's going to spread the virus, or at least gives the opportunity for the virus to spread. But equally, I respect that people want to, you know, they want to keep going about their life until they absolutely cannot any further. But, you know, some of us have got to be a bit more careful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's always best to play safe, I guess.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's like, you know, I'm no microbiologist who's an expert on these things, but the rate in which it's spreading, like for instance, China, where it initially started, they obviously locked down the whole country, and the spread of it has slowed down. Yeah. Ireland, as soon as they had a couple of cases, they closed the schools, they closed everything down for a couple of weeks. It's slowed down. Same in France, Italy, Spain. They've all gone that route now of closing down. I think Spain in particular, I've got some friends living there who is in full lockdown, and they're disinfecting the streets in the evenings by a helicopter, which, you know, it is scary in itself, you know, to think that it's at that stage. For me personally, I feel like the UK's like almost the governments are a bit arrogant or a bit slow in reacting. I understand not wanting to close things down, but like in my opinion, maybe it's better to close things down for 2 weeks, stop the spread of it, deep clean everything and whatever, and then, you know, then we can go back to stiff upper lip and get on with things. But maybe let's try and contain it first.
Yeah. It's a crazy situation. It's like living in a movie. Like it's just just don't happen in normal life, does it? But it is happening, and but we'll get through it. Yeah, we've got to stay optimistic. But you're right. You know, we've got to make the measures that are appropriate to keep everyone safe. And I think the lockdown will happen.
It's
in a matter of days anyway. And it's got a process. It's got to go through. You know, we just can't do a lot about it. We just need to protect the ones who are more vulnerable.
One of the more disappointing things I've got to say is, for me, like this is the last I'll say on it because it's not really MMA related, but it's like one of the more disappointing things for me is that we've had this thing. It's obviously kicked off really quickly. It's like it's gone from nothing to something very, very quickly. And I see all these videos of people fighting over toilet paper, and I saw someone yesterday got mugged for like as they came out of the shop for like household items, and there was people, like gangs of kids kicking people, and I just think if they're like that now, what are they going to be like when the shit really hits the fan, when it really gets bad? It's scary. I just think, like, as I grew up, and when I look back to when I was a kid, I feel like, obviously we never had a situation like this, but I feel like everyone would have come together. And now it kind of feels like very much like there's so many people who are only out for themselves, and it kind of makes me sad.
Yeah, I think you just get the full extent of what humanity really is, and that is dog eat dog at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a survival instincts. It doesn't make it right. You would think a modern society would hold itself together and stick together. I'm sure you do have pockets of community that will be supporting each other through these, difficult times. But I'm not surprised by hearing about, people mugging people and everyone panic buying. It doesn't surprise me. Yeah, people want to survive, and people get quite fearful. But it's quite shocking how, I don't know whether you say it's greedy or not, or selfish, but
how quickly people turn.
Yeah, they do very, very quickly, and they go back to animal instincts, if you will.
You say that though, but even animals protect their kind of young and vulnerable. Like they'll feed the young and vulnerable ones first. So even that is like an animal thing. And like what people don't understand as well is with the panic buying thing is, yes, you might be sorted, you might have toilet roll and sanitizer for the next few months, but other people haven't, which means that the virus is still going to spread because other people haven't got the essentials, and maybe it's people who can only go shopping once a week. They're the ones who will kind of miss out.
You're exactly right. There's no step back and thinking about the actual situations to hand. Unfortunately, these people that are bulk buying all the sanitizer are purely thinking about themselves. But yeah, you're exactly right. By bulk buying it and potentially preventing other people having what they need to do to keep themselves clean to stop the spread of it, are actually assisting it being spread, and it's always going to be up in the chance, no matter how much sanitizer you got, you're up in the chance of prolonging this situation, and then prolonging and up in the percentage chance that you're going to receive this illness and disease yourself at some stage. Craziness really. I'm sure there would be enough toilet roll, I'm sure there'd be enough sanitizer to go around if people were just being sensible about it.
Yeah, buy what you normally buy, and then everything's fine. The thing which did make me laugh, I saw a report yesterday that a guy bought up 17,000 bottles of sanitizer and was then trying to sell it on eBay and Amazon these things for ridiculous prices. And now eBay have blocked sales of sanitizer completely, and Amazon have blocked it, it being overpriced, which I just found hysterical, because you got this guy who's trying to make a quick buck, and in many ways, hats off to him for being creative, but you look a bit silly now because you've got 17,000 bottles of sanitizer which you can't sell. But I'm sure
it took a gamble. I'm sure it looked good on paper, but it's not worked out so well for him.
Yes, indeedy. So just before we get into last night's show, just a word from our sponsors as usual. Today's show brought to you by Away Day Apparel. Away Day Apparel is a group of casually obsessed football fans looking to bring something different to the wardrobes of like-minded people. Please visit their website, awaydayapparel.co.uk. I'll drop the links in the description. I highly recommend giving them a follow on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter is at awaydayapparel, and Instagram is at awayday_apparel. They recently hit 10,000 followers on Facebook, which has grown completely organically, and it's some really exciting stuff coming up for them over the next couple of months. I've seen some of the stuff they've got coming out, and obviously with the Euros being cancelled by the looks of it, that's going to rearrange probably their schedule of what they're going to release. But there is some good stuff coming, and we thank them for sponsoring the show, especially for and only for viewers, listeners of Ace Podcast Nation, we have a code which enables you to have 10% off all orders, and that's AA Podcast Nation, all in lowercase, AA Podcast Nation, and you get 10% off all orders at the checkout. And again, thank you to them for sponsoring the show as usual. Right then, let's get on to the main the meat.
Yeah, which
the meat
one
of the
first?
show. So the first fight is Francisco Trinaldo versus John Makadessi. What did you think of the show overall?
It was good. It was a little, maybe underwhelming, in overall compared to what we've been spoilt with over recent times. But yeah, there's a couple of the fights I actually really enjoyed watching. So yeah, I can't say I was disappointed. It was good viewing. Yeah, it was just, like we just said before, really, it was just the atmosphere was very strange. Being no crowd, but the other part of it, which actually worked good on the flip side, was I got to hear everything that the cornerman was shouting at actually as the fight was happening. That was actually quite an eye opener. Obviously, not all of them speak in English, but I did get to hear some of the cornermen, giving out their advice, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah, it gives a different feel to the fights as well, doesn't it? You can hear what the fighters and that actually was particularly interesting in the Johnny Walker fight, listening to what their corner was saying, and also the main event. The way the main event went, they told him to do one thing, and it actually cost him in the end, which was it was interesting to hear. But so the first fight, Trinaldo versus Makadessi. I really like Francisco Trinaldo. I think he's a really good fighter, and he's on a bit of a win streak at the moment.
Yeah, he's doing good. I actually, because I bet against him on this one, quite simply because I think it was his last fight. He looked really gassed. Yeah, I just wondered whether he's getting a bit long in the tooth for it, and yeah, maybe he's not so committed to his training, or he's a big weight cutter because he's quite a big lad. Yeah, so the reason I bet against him was I just thought throughout the rounds he'd start getting eaten up by Makadessi, but it just didn't happen that way, did it? Pretty much the first round was really how all the rounds went. But what did impress me was Trinaldo's striking and forward footing. He just did not change tact throughout the whole of the first round, pressing forward all the time. And what always makes striking interesting is when they've got opposite stance like they have. And yeah, Trinaldo was doing well considering Makadessi was always getting on the outside of his lead foot, which is what you should be doing when you're opposite stance. So Makadessi was doing great in terms of his footwork, but just didn't engage much. And so for me, I just felt like, the forward foot of Trinaldo, aggressive punches, throw the odd kick out there. He started to establish the round. I found my eye was being cast on what he was doing rather than what Makadessi was doing.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit of a story of the whole fight. Was Makadessi didn't do a great deal in terms of attack, which you can't win fights without doing this. So the first round began with Makadessi attacking Trinaldo with some leg kicks. Trinaldo nailed him with a nice kick to the midsection. He backed him up and he landed a nice left hook. Makadessi responded with a side kick to the midsection. Trinaldo came forward and he hit Makadessi with a left to the midsection, and then he stunned him with a combination, punch combination. Trinaldo continued coming forward while swinging. Makadessi and Trinaldo exchanged a couple of kicks, and then as the round ended, you had Trinaldo swinging away as Makadessi as the round ended.
Yeah, I mean, some of the combinations weren't particularly complex in their prep or anything like that. Some of the combinations that Trinaldo was doing was just like walking forward with three straights, but they were so committed. He was really bringing his feet in like a good striker should. There was nothing pretty about it, nothing beautiful about it, but it was really effective. Makadessi around about 1 minute 50 of the round threw out a little feeler head kick to see the response from Trinaldo, but didn't really build on it. Normally when someone fires out a head kick like that, where it didn't have a great deal of pep on it, it wasn't like he was hoping it was going to land. You would think he's been doing it to maybe see how he was reacting with his arms, see what he could set up with it, but never really threw another kick with the with the back leg that would suggest that he was trying to prep anything up. I was left a little confused by it. You did get a nice spinning heel kick from Trinaldo as well. It went a little bit wayward, but it goes to show you how confident he was getting very early on. Being it was the first round to do flamboyant moves like that, it goes to show you he's feeling comfortable in there. And it's hard to argue against Trinaldo being given that first round, in my opinion.
Yeah, I had a 10-9 for Trinaldo, and I felt like as the round went on, he became more and more confident, like you say. And funnily enough, in my notes, I put that the punch combinations and the combinations that he did land were very basic, or they seemed very basic to me. They weren't particularly flashy, and you kind of alluded to that as well. Which I found, I think the reason that caught my eye is because they were effective, but they seemed very basic. And I thought, well, maybe Makadesi should be able to deal with that a bit better than he did. Not that it like really, really troubled him, but he didn't get out of the way. He didn't, come back with anything really.
Yeah. I mean, Trinaldo, to be fair to him, not to say that he can't feint his way in and prep things up a little bit more complex, but he really didn't have to, because Makadesi was only using footwork to evade. He wasn't really counter-striking very often. I rated Makadesi's striking better than I saw last night. It didn't even appear to be a cardio issue. He looked fresh as a daisy, even at the end of the fight. Okay, he's a little scuffed up towards the end. But yeah, it's almost like he was competing about 70%. He was holding back 30%. Whereas Trinaldo looked like, he was giving 90 plus in every single round. A bit of a head scratcher, really. So, the second round was very, very similar. Footwork and around. It's almost like I thought maybe Makadesi was waiting for the latter part of the round and maybe go on a little flurry. Maybe he was conserving, felt like he could maybe put Trinaldo away towards the latter part of a round, seeing that he's seen him gas before in fights. But yeah, no such flurry come about.
No, he never got going. It was a weird one. Do you think that the lack of atmosphere and the lack of fans could influence?
This was, sorry, I was going to say, for the third round, but now we're getting on point. Maybe, because there was no crowd there cheering him on. Who's to say that he wasn't thinking he was winning the fight, but perhaps when those flurries and strikes coming forward from Trinaldo were backed up by some roars, he might have felt like, oh, okay, look, I'm falling behind here. So I think maybe it's a subconscious note for fighters. I think when an opponent's coming on strong and are getting jeered on by the crowd, it gives you more of a sense of urgency to come back. Maybe Makadesi just didn't feel like he had to, and he thought he was doing enough in there.
And I suppose like the roar of the crowd and the atmosphere generally is bound to, especially in a big show. This was a big show in Brazil. They don't get regular UFC shows. Maybe once or twice a year. So, the atmosphere would have been electric. So maybe that atmosphere adds to the adrenaline and everything. The overall feel of a fight. And like you say, when you have fighters who nail a couple of combinations or a big kick or a spinning move, the crowd roars. And if you haven't got that, there's an influence. It's an interesting thing because he didn't look right. And I don't mean he didn't look right in that he looked injured or he looked, gassed. He just didn't seem... It was almost like a training performance.
Yeah, and maybe
like sparring.
But the environment was very much like that. It's like, in training, you get a few people watching, and you just spar. It was literally like he was sparring, and he did some real rookie things. An example was that Trinaldo threw a head kick up with his left leg, which is his rear stance leg, and it partially got through his guard and I think connected with his face with the foot. Nothing hugely consequential. It didn't rock him by any stretch, but still, still would have scored somewhat. And then Makadesi goes to fire back with a head kick of his own, not committed at all, but it was a real lame kick again. It just didn't look like he was throwing it. I think even if it landed, it wouldn't have squashed a fly on his head. But when I say a rookie thing to do. It's just that when someone tags you with something, quite often what someone will do of intermediate or lower level will do, they will mimic the same kick back at you. It's like he got scored at to the head, and then he threw one almost immediately back. I just thought it was beyond that, really. Yeah, I don't know. We won't know the answers to whether the crowd is what's affecting him until we see him fight again, where there is a crowd, and to see whether he performs a little bit better. It may have been that their opposite stance, and Trinaldo was going forward so much, and he just felt like he couldn't get himself going. Could well have been that. I mean, Trinaldo did perform very, very well, and we mustn't put Makadesi's performance down to the fact that he might not have been doing good. It might be for the fact that Trinaldo was just doing so well. We're not the ones in there at the end of the day, and I know how awkward it can be when they're opposite stance and good strikers. Trinaldo was doing really, really tremendous. He didn't change what he was doing from the first round, and he had no reason to. So I just felt like he took the second round in very, very similar fashion to that he did the first round.
Yeah, and the other thing is Trinaldo's very, very experienced fighter. Very, very experienced fighter. Just to quickly go through the second round, obviously you've just covered a lot of it. The round began with Makadesi attempting a high kick, which, as you mentioned, he tried it in the first round, he tried it in the second round, but didn't really follow it up. Trinaldo came forward, he threw some lefts. Trinaldo goes for the high kick of his own. They exchanged some kicks to the midsection again. Makadesi and Trinaldo also exchanged some leg kicks. Trinaldo came forward. He takes a few swings against Makadesi. And then Trinaldo backs Makadesi up by throwing a pair of lefts. And he nails Makadesi with an uppercut as the round ends. And like even in the notes and the write-up of the round, it's very, very similar to the first round.
There was a miss. There was a slip as well that Makadesi tried like a heel kick to the head as well. But again, anything that he did with his legs up towards the head looked like almost point sparring type attacks. So he did with no particular venom on it, but he slipped off balance. So you could also argue maybe he felt like it was slippery in there for him. I know we've had an issue of slipping with fighters before. I know Linton Vassell, his feet were particularly dry. And it made his experience when he was in the cage on one of his fights really slippery. So it could have perhaps been the fact that he lost his footing. I don't know. I'm trying to make excuses here for him. And again, I don't want to take away from Trinaldo, but I'm just trying to see what was up and trying to give myself clues to what it may have been. There was a slip there, so maybe he was feeling a little bit like he didn't have the base underneath his feet in terms of his grip. Because it was a big back pedal affair for the second round as well.
Yeah, and I suppose if your offense is heavily kick based and you don't feel like your base leg is secure when you're going for those big kicks and those high kicks particularly, then it's going to make you reluctant to really put some stank on it.
Because there was none. So in fact, how he started up that third round, he was throwing up those high kicks and body kicks a lot more often, but there just was no real deal on them. There was kicks that were going through the motion, but there weren't no real venom. It's almost like he felt incapable of hurting Trinaldo. So he just sort of threw him out there as a matter of fact, like a sparring session, like you said, previously.
Yeah, you mentioned just then about like as if he was doing a point scoring thing, which you'd get in kind of like amateur. I think it's kickboxing. Or
kickboxing.
Like you get in like fencing and stuff like that, isn't it? Where you get like a point for a strike or whatever. And it did feel like that kind of power where you're not going to knock out your opponent. You're just trying to make a clean connection.
Yeah.
It was interesting. Equally, Trinaldo I thought was very impressive. The third round began with Makadesi attacking Trinaldo with some leg kicks. Trinaldo charged at him whilst swinging. Trinaldo attempted a few flying knee strikes, and Makadesi, he blocked him. To be fair, none of the knee strikes really landed. Trinaldo went for a punch combination. They both exchanged several combinations. Makadesi cracked Trinaldo with a side kick to the chin. Didn't do a great deal. Trinaldo came forward. He nailed Makadesi with a nice uppercut. and then Makadesi, he did look for a couple of spinning attacks towards the end of that third round.
Yeah.
And then obviously as the round ended, they were kind of swinging at each other, but it was almost like just right in those last minute or two, Makadesi realized that, maybe the fight's not secure, and he tried something different, but it was a bit too little too late, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It was like a wet firework. That's the only way I could describe his performance. I was waiting for him to go off with a bang. I just thought that he was holding back to do something big at the end of each round, but nothing materialized. You can't win fights doing that. You just can't win fights, especially on the UFC. I mean, Dana White wouldn't have been very impressed with that performance. He's quite critical. He's openly critical. He was engaging to a point. Let's not be overly harsh on him. He just never looked like he wanted to enforce dominance in any particular round. I mean,
he didn't want to take charge at all, did he? He didn't.
No, not at all. And I think with the way Trinaldo looked, we could have seen a stoppage in his favour. Had Makadesi not ran away in the circle so much, because he absolutely looked on form. There was some good pep on his hand punches going in. He was being diverse with his kicks as well, trying side kicks and what have you. I think he was informed to stop someone who's willing to go toe to toe to him. So maybe for Makadesi's sake, it was a good idea to keep pedaling away like he did.
Yeah, and like you say, maybe that's the reason. Maybe he knew that if he engaged too aggressively, Trinaldo would take him out. But he won by unanimous decision. Trinaldo was 30-27, 30-27, 29-28, which I thought was a bit weird.
Yeah, that's quite surprising.
But I had it at 30-27, so I was comfortable.
Exactly the same. Yeah, same for me.
I was just going to have a quick look at our predictions. I think so.
I had Makadesi for that one, I'm sure.
You did. You had Makadesi, and I had Trinaldo.
Yeah, and the reason I was going to go Makadesi was because I've seen Trinaldo. I've seen him gas a little bit, and I thought Makadesi's striking would have been up to a little bit more, and would have put Trinaldo under pressure. Maybe see Trinaldo fade. That's what I thought was going to happen in the fight.
In fairness, I don't think he was putting under enough pressure to fade. Almost like he didn't have to do a lot of groundwork. He didn't even have to do a great deal of striking. I mean, probably the most work he had was chasing Makadesi to get that connection. But it is what it is. It was a good performance by Trinaldo. Good win. This next fight, I was really excited when I saw that it was on the card. I've been a big fan of Johnny Walker's fights. I thought I was very disappointed with his previous performance. But up until then, he'd looked the real deal from a striking point of view. So this was number 11 ranked Johnny Walker versus number 12 ranked Nikita Krylov. It's not Krylov. It's I keep saying Krylov. I think it's Krylov.
Nikita,
Nah, I thought it was Krylov. I've always thought it's Nikita Krylov, but the announcers were calling him Krylov or Krylov. Overall, what did you think of this fight? Because I was very disappointed.
In its overall, I think we're seeing holes in Walker's game. He looks a little bit certainly lacking strategically. It makes me wonder now that all these knockouts that he got were not lucky, because I always say I don't believe in it being luck. I just think that people didn't know how to deal with his body composition.
He's a big boy, isn't he?
He's very tall, very, very long, and I think he was getting away with landing. And he's a young, tenacious, athletic kid, and once he rocks you early, he's going to go for the finish, because he's barely ever been out the first round. So
this was the first time.
Well, this was the first time. Now we've seen someone, take it to him. His gas tank looks suspicious. His strategy looks suspicious, and his overall technique, he was certainly lacking on the ground with his technical know-how. yeah, I'm just wondering whether he's been found out a little bit now. He's going to have to go back to the drawing board and trying to get himself to be more effective in all areas, really.
Yeah, it was a weird one. Like Nikita Krylov is a good fighter. You know, he's no mug, and that should be said. But then Johnny Walker, he knocked out Corey Anderson, who's also excellent fighter. Who else has he fought? He's fought Justin Ledet, Khalil Roundtree. So there's a couple of fighters in there who are, he hasn't just been fed like bums, for lack of a better word. He's fought some decent fighters. I feel like they gave him Nikita Krylov to try and get him back on the winning thread.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think they was expecting him to win.
Because Krylov didn't offer much from a striking point of view. So I think from a company point of view, they gave him Krylov thinking he would knock him out and get back into that winning thread. Just before we go into the actual ins and outs of the fight, the one thing I will say is, before he's had 2 losses now. Before that, people were talking about him being the one to take John Jones's title from him. Well, I tell you something.
Yeah.
Even though John Jones hasn't looked massively impressive in his last couple of fights, John Jones would absolutely decimate Johnny Walker at this time. Because John Jones is so good everywhere that I just don't think Johnny Walker's, obviously it's a fight and Johnny Walker could nail him with the perfect shot and knock him out. But at this time, he's got too many deficiencies in his game, I think. But obviously, you would know more than me.
Yeah, definitely not complete enough to be up with the ranks of Jones. You're absolutely right. Like I say, I just think he was getting good results from him because he's very long, very tall. He was rocking people early and then going for the finish. But Krylov, or however you pronounce his name, Nikita, he did the absolute right thing in shooting in on Walker early and making it a cage wrestling affair, make it a little dirty, because his wrestling wasn't exactly clinical. It was all mainly up against the fence. It was very smother orientated, and some of the success with the takedowns that you were getting were not textbook takedowns. He kind of ground Walker down to the mat. Walker, just didn't show enough know-how on how to get back up to his feet. He looked rather stuck there. His long frame kind of went against him to scramble back up, because he's got these long legs that you can hook inside of. That's what Nikita was doing. He was stepping over those long legs, and he couldn't draw those legs out to get stood back up in that first round. So you saw predominantly this round being sort of wrestled out with Walker sat on his bum against the fence. Nikita couldn't quite make enough of it to look, super decisive in his aggression, but certainly super decisive in the positioning. He was on top. He was winning rounds, most of the way through in that cage position where Walker was sat. Overall, I was impressed with Nikita's team and Nikita with his game plan. I think this was absolutely the right way to go for him in that first round. In his training prep, I'm sure if they could have guessed it to go in his favor, it would have been like this. Yeah. So well done to them.
So do you think, like, obviously, so he fought Justin Ledet, he knocked him out in 15 seconds. Then he fought Misha Shirkinov, knocked him out in 30 seconds. Both Shirkinov and Ledet will go toe to toe with whoever they fight. They'll be very aggressive, which obviously, when you've got someone as long and as strong and with striking as Johnny Walker, he creates these funny angles, and that was the result. Then he lost to Corey Anderson, who obviously Corey Anderson is an established fighter, but also Corey Anderson is very, very capable on the ground.
Yeah.
And then obviously you've got Nikita Krylov, who very, very able on the ground. He showed that he had, like you say, the team obviously had a game plan. And, if Johnny Walker wants to make it in the UFC as a top lightweight or light heavyweight, he's got to adapt. Because as the saying goes, if you don't adapt, you perish.
Absolutely.
And the very top, we talked about it before. These days, the very top of the game, you've got to be able to do everything to a decent standard, if not a excellent standard.
Sure. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I just saw some worrying signs really when he was on his back. I was saying, look, up until that halfway point, really, it was with his back set up against the fence, which give him some kind of hope at getting up. But those long legs went against him, as I say, getting hooked up by Nikita. But when his back did go on the ground, and we saw some closed and open guard, the open guard was really loose. His feet were left dangling up in the air. Those legs looked long and weak rather than long and strong. If you watch someone on their back like Nate Diaz or Nick Diaz, they're really effective with their long legs. They really know how to create leverage. They know how to use every part of their body to the max. Johnny Walker really showed none of those attributes. I think a lot of the fighters that are potentially going to face Walker are going to take a nice double look at this fight, and they're going to be aiming for these holes that have been showing up in his game. But this is the thing, see, he had a lot of really fast wins, and they're really hard to read anything into. I mean, a win's a win, however you take it. But, does it really show you the full potential of your MMA skill set?
No.
Everyone's got a puncher's chance at the end of the day. That can always happen. It seems that he's had all his opportunities come early, and now we're seeing, the other side of his skill set. He's got to make changes.
He's got to be mentally strong as well, hasn't he? Now, and really, knuckle down and
he's got to be honest.
Learn. He's a very young guy. So we're not writing him off saying that's it. He's not good enough.
No,
he's obviously got something about him to get to where he is, but now he needs to go and put that hard work in and get to grips, because there was some worrying signs there in terms of how he was defending the grappling exchanges.
Yeah.
Did you feel like Krylov should have finished him? Or did you feel like he didn't quite get the opportunity?
Not necessarily, because he had to do this dirty wrestling game, and that's exhausting for both parts, to be honest. It's not easy, being up against the fence. And let's not take it away. Walker's still a big old lump of a guy, really unusual body composition to be up against. Probably, although Walker was showing a bit of lack of technical know how to avoid those takedowns and how to get back up, I imagine he's still a bit of a physical lump to try to dominate. So I'm not going to be harsh on Nikita for not, finishing Walker. As much as we've been a bit harsh on Walker because he was such a prospect, people are thinking such big things from him, me included. It mustn't take anything away. Walker still be, a hard opponent for everyone, but I think Nikita still looked really, really good. I didn't think that because of the way Walker was performing, Nikita should have finished it by any stretch. I think he performed very, very well overall and was playing safe, if you will.
Yeah. And, Krylov is experienced. He's beaten OSP. He's fought Glover Teixeira. So, he lost to Glover, but he beat OSP.
Yes.
So even though he's only 28, he's quite an experienced fighter.
Yeah.
He's fought Jan Blachowicz. He's been in the UFC since 2012. Which tells you, and some of the people he's fought, I just flicking through it. There's some big names in there.
It's been consistent. I just think when he's moved up that extra level, he's just been a little bit short. But it is a good one. If you can beat someone of Krylov's level, you're sort of stepping into that top 10 ranking. He's sort of like floating around that, isn't he? And I think that's pretty much where I would see him. But he could well be making another little run. Let's see whether he can build off it now. It'd be interesting to see who they give Krylov next. Actually, that'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah, he didn't really name anyone, I don't think, in his post-match interview. Who would you like to see Walker? Would you, if you were booking it, would you give him like a strike and like someone who's going to play into his strengths, or would you give him someone who's going to keep testing him?
Yeah, I'd give him someone who's going to test him a little bit to see whether he's going to make some kind of adjustments. Maybe a good ground guy that's not necessarily an absolute devastating wrestler, so it gives him hopes at trying to keep it standard for as long as he can, and give him a chance to get back to the feet. I think if you put him up against a real solid wrestler, I think you could possibly see him being just smothered, which will not be good viewing. I don't think Dana White's into making intentional matchups that are going to look boring. So I think that they may be giving someone that's going to be a good grappler, but not necessarily an absolute devastating wrestler. So he's going to have opportunities to try to look good on the feet and working his way out of some positions and giving him some experience in there. I do think they should look after him somewhat. I know he's had these quick knockouts and what have you, but I think from that performance he needs to be redeveloped a little bit. He's still so young. And he is an absolute potential talent when you look at his physicality. He's obviously got the flamboyancy to come out and throw big and throw from weird angles, like you say, which has been the reason why he's had his successes. It's all about his camp and all about him. Will they make amendments after this performance and be honest with themselves? And that's what it's really all about, is being honest with yourself. Like, hey, I'll come up short here. And the reasons I come up short was because of this, this, and this. Let's do something about it. Time will tell.
Yeah, so the top 15 for the light heavyweight, you've got Jones as champion, then you've got Dominic Reyes, Thiago Santos, Anthony Smith, Jan Blachowicz, Corey Anderson, Volkan Ozdemir, Alexander Gustafsson, Glover Teixeira, Alexander Rakitic, Johnny Walker, Misha Shirkinov, Nikita Krylov, and then Magomed Ankalaev, and then Ronaldo Souza and Marcio Rua. So to me, I think that Dana White might give him Serkinov again because Serkinov won recently.
Quite possibly so.
Because they're 10 and 11 respectively. Obviously, he beat Serkinov, so Serkinov would want the fight. But like we were just discussing, I'm not entirely sure that's what's best for him because Serkinov will be very strike orientated, which is what Johnny Walker wants. Obviously, you've got Rakitic just above him, or you could go the kind of mini super fight and have him versus like a Magomed Ankalaev, who's going to be, he can go with a striking route, but also do the wrestling.
He's more complete. You would imagine that anyone seeing that, if they got the wrestling and grappling potentials, that they will be steering it to the ground after this performance. Really.
Yeah, I don't feel like they could give him anyone above that, like a Corey Anderson again or an Ozdemir. I just feel they're too experienced and too technically sound compared to where he is. I would like to see Nikita Krylov versus maybe a Corey Anderson or even Alexander Rakitic.
I would agree with that completely. I think that would be a really good match. I would like to see that. I think Corey Anderson would be great match for them too.
And because the thing is, if Krylov could pull off that win, Corey Anderson's ranked number 5. But if so it's like it's enough of a carrot for him dangled. If he beats Corey Anderson, that's a big jump for him. You could potentially break the sort of top 8, and then equally Corey Anderson, if he wins, he can start talking about maybe titles and things. So be interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I think that'd be a good call.
I'd rather than break down, round by round. I think we'll just sort of generally talk about it.
It was kind of hard to break down, technique for technique because a lot of it was a bit smothery, really. There were attempts by Walker to throw up his legs for triangles or maybe some armbar attempts, but they were really half-hearted. He really didn't know how to activate his hips properly. We call it having live hips when you elevate them off the ground. He was doing it with his feet off the ground so long. You really want to connect your feet with the hips or the ground to shift your hips out. There was none of that. He left them dangling up in the air a lot. I think this is why you saw him get put on the ground and then stuck on the ground. He wasn't able to do anything with it.
There was a couple of instances in the first and second round where I almost felt like he had like a good idea or the right idea to. I think he went for like a triangle or an armbar, when he was at his back on the ground, but he didn't quite know how to execute it or to transition to it. So he had the idea.
Yeah,
he had the idea of where he wanted to go and how to defend in an offensive way, but he just didn't know have the know-how maybe or the technique to do it. I'm not sure.
And he was doing it in a fashion that when it fouled, he didn't have the second go-to recover position. You know, if you've got an established grappler, what they will do is they will attempt an armbar, and if it fails, they'll retract back to a closed guard or an open guard, you know, to reset in a good secondary to position. But we never really saw that. We saw him like fire up his legs for something, get hit for it, and maybe that, you know, for Nikita to pass position and get an even better position each time. I mean, but he had his moments. I think it was the end of the second round that he got on top, didn't he?
Yeah, he nailed him with a couple of clean shots, didn't he?
Yeah, and he had a little bit of top position play. But
and you do wonder with that as well. With that, sorry to cut you off. With that end of that second round where he did nail a couple of good shots from the top. Maybe if there had been an extra minute or so, he maybe, you know, because he's such a big boy, if he nails a couple of those shots really clean, there's potential to finish the fight.
Yeah, I felt like that's what I thought. You know, when he got that top, I thought, oh, here we go. You know, this could be a big turnaround. But it was almost like, you know, his killer energy that he has in those muscles had already been depleted out of him. I think it was such a smother fest that what I saw him throwing were a little bit laboured, and you know, and to take nothing away from Nikita kept going for those leg locks, which was upsetting the base of Walker. So, you know, Walker was really up against it, even when he had a good position. It was not a straightforward affair for him. But I did think that was going to be a turnaround point. He did a really big knee to the body as well. And I thought, oh, crikey, we're going to see a big flurry here. But the punches looked a little bit laboured. He looked a little tired. And, you know, we can only commend Nikita really for that smothering wrestling style that he put upon him. I just think it made the dangerous Johnny Walker that we've seen so often not so dangerous.
Yeah, I think people don't particularly people who've not, you know, done MMA or done wrestling or done jiu-jitsu, is how tiring having someone on top of you for 5 minutes is. Like how much it takes out of you just defending these sort of grappling exchanges, particularly when you've never been out of the first couple of minutes of a fight. And it showed, you know, apart from, without even going back into like his technique issues, just you could tell after that first 3-4 minutes of the first round, he was gassed and he was blown out, and
he was.
It was difficult. He never got to, at any point in any of the rounds really. He was never able to instigate his game from hit these big kicks and strikes from afar.
No, he was getting smothered. I think that the time, other than the end of that second round, the only time that I thought, oh, something could be up here, was at the beginning of that third round, where he ended up with like a Stocks attack on the neck, like a crank with the body. He under pummeled and had his head trapped, and they sort of like went to the ground, and he had a bit of top play there. But that looked like it could have been nasty on Krylov's neck, but his head popped out. He was underneath, and Walker was trying to be aggressive with the ground and pound. But like I say, he was looking laboured a little bit, and he ended up taking mount position. And I thought, right, well, look, he's got mount position now. Maybe he's really going to take something here. But he lost his mount position. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
You know, he lost it quite easily as well, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. And I think this was a combination of, you know, not such polished jiu-jitsu, and a combination of that and being fatigued, because he sort of just rolled off him like he just couldn't physically hold that mount position. And he really threw away that round with bad base. Any jiu-jitsu coach in his corner or in his team will be screwing, and that he'll be getting a telling off from whoever his ground coach is. That's not a good show of skill, losing a mount position the way he did.
No, it was nothing. Wasn't like a special reversal, was it? It was just
no, not at all.
Kind of just moved him off him. So the official result was 30-27, 29-28, 29-28. I think I had it at 30-27.
Yeah, exactly. Same for me. I can't see how someone give him a round, really.
No, nowhere. Next up was a quick one, and boy, oh boy, what a finish! Renato Moicano versus Demir Hadovic.
Right, yes.
You taught me through this, my friend, because it was a quick one.
Yeah, this one really didn't last long. I actually think, you had the winner for this one, didn't you? I thought I was going to see a little bit more from my guy, Hadovic. Hadovic just looked outclassed very, very early on. He got taken down with, he had under pummels in the shoot. So when he got shot in on him, they had a little exchange, didn't they? A few little exchange, and he had double unders. He had double underhooks. Now, if you've got double underhooks, you just shouldn't be getting taken down. But Marciano, he took him down really, really quickly. He whipped round to his back, locked in that body triangle, and Hodovic looked lost. He didn't appear to really know how to defend that rear naked choke properly, or make it awkward for the body triangle. He was a sitting duck. Really disappointing. I thought he'd have a little bit more in him than that. I shouldn't have bet against you on that one. I just thought I was going to see more of him. But they had a few words, didn't they, at the end? I don't know what that was about. There was a few little words, but I don't know what that was about.
Apparently, Moicano was frustrated that his family couldn't come over and there was no fans there. So I think he said something, but not necessarily directed at Hadovic. I think it was like just a general frustration. But because he did it right by Hadovic after he just tapped him out, Hadovic thought it was directed at him, and I think a little bit got lost in translation, and it became something that it probably wasn't. But I mean,
But as a technical thing, just to point out for the fight for people who watch it, one of the things we're doing in our training at the minute is a lot of get-ups. So we go through different themes, and we're cycling the theme of getting up from different positions. So like closed guard into an open guard, out in open space, closed guard to open guard, up against the fence, because things change there. How do you get up from half guard? All these different things. And if you have a look how do you say his name? Hadovic. Hadovic. If you have a look how he got up, he had no connection with the guy whatsoever. He just tried to sit up, and so he showed the shelf of his back. And of course, someone of that caliber is going to see that. He's going to see that back, and he's going to run round to it. You have to connect with a post of some sort. He had to have a hand or a forearm connected so that if he tried to come around the back of him, he would attract him with that hand. But he didn't. He actually tried to come up with no connection with him. Extremely stupid thing to do at this level. I mean, that's what an amateur would do. So that one mistake against that level of guy is going to lead to a quick submission, which is what we saw.
Yeah, as soon as he got his back, he looked. He didn't know what to do. Obviously, it's a difficult position to be in. So I had watched Moicano. He'd lost his 2 fights previous to this. He lost to Chang Sung Young by knockout, and he also lost to Jose Aldo by knockout. However,
he did. He was always looking so good, though.
I was going to say that. I really felt he looked good in both fights, so that's why I went with him.
Yeah, this guy's the real deal. He's the real deal. I just thought maybe because he's had a hard time of it, I thought maybe he wouldn't be coming forward so aggressively, but he was giving it. Like I say, you show someone of that caliber on the ground, the back like that, they're going to jump on it, and being so fresh as well. I mean, that's going to be a hard thing to try to deal with. You can only beat what's in front of you at the end of the day. Yeah, I think we're going to see this guy move up those ranks. Yeah, he had those 2 losses, like you pointed out, but he never looked bad in them, really. It's just, that's the way the fight went.
Big names as well.
Yeah, big names.
Jose Aldo.
Once this guy gets some momentum, I think he's going to be a real contender.
Very, very good in the grapple exchanges.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's very sharp.
When it's like any sport, isn't it? It's like if you make a mistake in the danger zone of whatever sport it is, at the very highest level, you'll get finished, taken out. It'll be a goal. It'll be, you'll be punished for it. and he punished him in seconds, because that's what top level fighters do. They see the error and they take advantage.
Yeah.
So next up was the co-main event, which was Damian Maia versus Gilbert Burns. I went with Damian Maia purely because I think it was a loyalty thing, just because I big fan of his jiu-jitsu and his grappling, and he's the king of the submissions.
You can never write Damian Maia off. He is the KO of the jiu-jitsu world. He only has to get on your back once and it could be curtains. And he's found many ways to get to your back. He doesn't have to be the greatest wrestler in the world. He'll take you back while up against the fence. He's got a very, very good game. But Gilbert Burns is a really accomplished grappler too.
Real deal.
A good decade of years more junior to him, so I know he'd have more cardio about him, and I know he's got pretty good striking as well. He's a pretty tenacious striker, so I knew Damian Maia would have to put him away in the first 1.5 rounds, and I didn't think he was capable to do that. That's why I bet against him, and that's why I went for Burns really. And it played out kind of the way I didn't expect him to get knocked off his feet like that. I just thought he would end up getting exhausted. I thought it was going to be a case that we'd see Damian Maia start to shoot and foul and do that sitting, just sort of shooting and then sitting back to guard. I thought it was going to be a little bit like that, but he never got as far as that, did it? But what we did see of Maia, he come out and he actually looked good. I was a little bit worried I was going to lose another bet because he did get hold of Burns quite early. And looked like he was going to take a dominant position really quick. I was impressed with Burns going for the legs of Maia. As soon as it did go to the ground, he was not mincing about. He did exactly what he said he would do, which was to exchange on the ground. But he actually used those leg lock attempts to scramble back up. I think this is something that he would have been prepping in training. So he set up the shot of that leg, didn't he? And he scrambled up really well.
Ability. Showed some real ability, didn't he?
Yeah, well, his maturity in it. He didn't over mix with Maia on the ground. He had a little punt at the ankle. He felt that he wasn't there, and he used it to create a scramble to get back to his feet. But Maia, because he was fresh, was straight back in on him and on his back. And again, I was thinking, oh my goodness, this is where Damian Maia loves it. He loves getting on the back up against that fence. But I can't even remember. I'm just having a look here because I haven't got in my notes how he took him down. I don't think it was an actual takedown. No, it's sort of like it was sort of smothered to the ground a little bit. Oh, that's right. Yeah, he jumped on the back. I'm just watching it now. He jumped in one hook and it sort of fell to the ground.
Yeah.
And I actually was thinking, oh my goodness, this is only 2 minutes in. Here we go. This could be an early one for Burns. But Burns had the wits about him. The thing I think he had done in his prep was obviously look at ways to scramble up at any given opportunity as soon as there's the slightest bit of space in the transition.
Yeah.
And that's how he escaped. He escaped always went during the transition, whether it was him transitioning for the leg lock for an attack or whether it was Maia looking to exchange a position to try to advance himself, which is what we saw with the second scramble up. Damian Maia was trying to progress and Burns scrambled out really, really well. And didn't hang about, which is exactly what you should do with someone of Damian Maia's years. He's in his 40s. As soon as you get up from a situation like that, be on him with the strikes, put him under pressure, reduce that gas tank of his down to 0. But didn't even need to work his gas tank because I can't remember which punch it was. Was it cross punch that landed?
It was a left hook.
Was it a left hook? I can't remember.
So,
It was a left hook. I'm just watching back now. Yeah, it was a left hook, not a cross punch. Yeah, it was a lovely left hook. And then just went on a little flurry, really. I think Burns was that fresh. It was halfway through the first round. I think had it gone on for another 20 seconds, you would have seen Maia get busted up bad. Absolute good stoppage.
Yeah, I think Burns thought he'd KO'd him because he started to celebrate, didn't he? So I think he had he thought he had knocked him out clean. But Gilbert Burns looks the real deal. He's on a seven fight unbeaten streak. And one thing which has impressed me the last couple of fights is his striking. He's very, very, very good on the ground. We knew that.
Yeah.
But what has impressed me is just the level of his striking looks outstanding. He's got power. He's got speed. He's a 3-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu champion. So we know that he's excellent on the ground. Whether, obviously coming into this fight was whether he was as good as the King, we didn't know. He said he was going to go, he wasn't going to shy away from it. He said he was going to exchange with Damian Maia.
Yeah, he did exchange, but he was not going to link together one attack after another. He had one attack attempt, then he was turning it into a scramble to get back off the ground. So I don't quite believe everything he was saying that he was going to exchange.
He's confident.
I'm glad he didn't over exchange against Maia, because why play in someone's ground where situation where they could potentially win when you can get it back up on the feet, where Damian Maia is obviously not as effective. So I'm glad that he didn't do what so many young tenacious fighters do, and that's to prove a point. There was absolutely no need. We know he's world class and top tier on the ground anyway. He didn't have to make a statement. This is MMA. This is not jiu-jitsu. If he wants to make a statement, do a jiu-jitsu match with Damian Maia. My money would be on Maia for that one, by the way.
But it's maybe they could. Like if you went
get that on. That'll be good to watch.
It's like if you went into a fight with Conor McGregor and then repeatedly stood there letting him hit you with his left hand because you want to prove that you can outstrike him or whatever. You don't want to play it. You don't play into your opponent's strengths. You want to try and play into your strengths whilst also defending what they're best at. Gilbert Burns will be I'll be really, really interested to see where they go next with him, because obviously he's on this streak, and I'll be interested to see. He deserves a pay-per-view match. First of all, like a proper pay-per-view, not a fight night. But I'll be interested to see whether they get a really big name or whether they just put him on like the first match on a pay-per-view card against like someone maybe not massive, but someone who he can get on the pay-per-view card for it. So look at the welter.
They certainly need to step him up substantially and see what goes on there. Maybe get someone who's quite complete.
In fairness to him, he's just beaten. He's ranked before this fight. He's ranked number 12. He's just beaten number 5. So really, he should be going for a Leon Edwards, a George A. Masvidal, Colby Covington, or Tyrone Woodley. But I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they put him up against like a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, maybe, who's ranked number 6.
I would like to see him up against Woodley. I think this will be real good.
That'd be a real good fight, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and then that could put Woodley straight back up there, or obviously this will thrust him straight into the main mix, wouldn't it? I think that would be a good one.
Yeah, and then obviously between Burns and Maia, you've got Thompson, Michael Chiesa, you've got Rafael Dos Anjos, Nate Diaz, Jeff Neal, Robbie Lawler. And then you've got like Anthony Pettis, and then you've got Conor McGregor down there at 15. But I mean, I don't know if Conor McGregor's going to stay at welterweight. And I got a feeling he might be more interested in some other fights. But there's a couple of fights there for him.
There's a lot of options. There's a few of those names that you mentioned, which will be really interesting matchups. He's ready for any of them.
What they could do is they could give him the winner of Tyrone Woodley and Leon Edwards. If they really want to shoot him to the top. Or if they want to gradually do it, they could give him like a Robbie Lawler or a Michael Chiesa or a Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Or do they go for like a big fight who's someone who's not massive, really high up the rankings in like a Nate Diaz? That would be an interesting fight, because they would both go toe-to-toe with strikes. But they're both very
good on the ground.
Yeah, I like that fight. I think I like that.
Yeah.
Nate Diaz versus Gilbert Burns. The problem with Nate Diaz is trying to get him to agree fights and whatnot.
Yeah, I think he's going to be someone that will always do super fights now rather than for belts and stuff. I just think.
Yeah, I don't know if it counts as a super fight, but I think him versus Gilbert Burns would be an outstanding watch.
Yeah. No, it'd be a good one.
And next up, we have the main event of the evening. Kevin Lee, who's been on a tear, and the highly rated Charles Oliveira. Now, I got to say, I was a bit naive before this fight. I hadn't been overly impressed with Oliveira. I thought he looks okay. I didn't think he would look that great. Whereas I had been very impressed with Kevin Lee recently.
Yeah.
Oliveira was, once he settled himself after those early minutes, I thought he was really good.
Yeah. Well, I went for Oliveira. I know how good he is. I've just seen too many times. I've seen bad choices later in rounds from Kevin Lee, and also had suspect cardio as well. And I think that all comes with he just tries to be so physical with everything that it's not possible. I mean, even a marathon runner, if he busts out the first 5 mile and almost world record pace, he ain't going to run a very fast marathon. It's almost like he comes out so hard, and if it works for him, it looks great on the highlight reel. I'm so impressed with his boxing. His hands are so good, and he's got so much power in them. I wish he would just hold back a little bit and just choose to use them a little bit more collectively. And I think you'd see him get better results. But yeah, I mean, this Oliveira, man, he's not easy to deal with in any situation. You can strike, he'll strike with you. You can grapple, the grapple exchanger. And he's awkward with the wrestling as well. He's quite long. We've got tricks up his sleeve. It doesn't matter really whether you're going to out wrestle him, put him on his back, man. He's going for your legs. He's throwing up arm bars, triangles. And if he don't get off his back, he'll hold you in close guard and throw down those elbows. This guy would be, to me, I can imagine it'd be like fighting a hedgehog. You can attack it, but you're going to get injured in some way yourself. But they come out, always Lee looked like in that first round that, oh, crikey, it only takes one of those shots to land clean and he's going to put Oliveira on his ass. This was always my worry in terms of how we bet on this. So I thought, he could get put out by Lee, but he was doing the right thing. He's been diverse and he's pushing Lee back. He stopped Lee tracking Oliveira down. Oliveira was the one pressing forward. And I think this is why Lee was unable to land and put him on his ass. He was forcing him to circle back.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question actually about this because I felt like Lee's team maybe gave him the wrong advice after the first round. Maybe. So after the first round, they told him that the only reason Oliveira was trying to take him to the ground was because he couldn't live with his power. And like you've just said, the problem with Lee is he comes out so fast and aggressive that it doesn't always work for him in the later stages. So what he did then is he came out in the second round looking for it. He got caught with a couple of strikes, and then he ended up going for the takedown because he had been hurt. And then, of course, Oliveira would go on to finish the fight. And I just wondered what you thought of the advice, really, or if you could give any insight into why they gave that advice, because it didn't really, to me as a viewer and someone who's not trained in MMA, it didn't correlate to what I just watched in the first round.
Right. Yeah. I pretty much agree with you. I just wanted to see a slightly more patient Lee. Try and cut the angles. Try to get something on the way in with his hands. He was either planted on the spot or retracting back. I would have been saying, look, Oliveira's going to come to you, plant your feet or come forward on it as he comes forward, and get those precision hands because he has got really good accuracy.
Lightning hands, haven't he?
Yeah, he has got lightning. He's obviously got really fast. He's a little bit like Conor McGregor in his physicality. He's obviously explosive and quite accurate. He just doesn't quite have the creativity of someone like McGregor. McGregor really opens you up, so he hits you clean, and he's got devastating power. It's like he doesn't know how to open someone up. Oliveira was always going to come forward and be really proactive, and I would have been saying to Lee, plant your feet, maybe come in and meet him, and once you tag him, then maybe use some energy. But he just seems to use that energy in the wrong places at the wrong time.
Yeah, it's I feel for him in some ways because I do feel like he's had some bad luck. I know you say about luck. I don't mean luck in his fights. I mean like luck with injuries and fights being pulled. But yet again, we have a fighter in the main event of a card, big show, who was 2 pounds overweight. it's a pet hate of mine, and I know I don't know. I don't weight cut, and I know how much pressure it puts on these fighters. I know that, but it frustrates me that these guys and girls keep coming in missing weight.
No, it's not good enough. Maybe there should be a bigger consequence to not making the weight. But what you put in place for that, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, because they don't want to pull fights, do they? But
no. Fair play to Oliveira. He would still going to fight. He's a true fighter. This guy's a warrior. He's an exciting one for the mix. He's definitely proven himself to be one of the top end of division and could prove to be the best. He's got all the attributes: good striking, all good wrestling style. Like I say, it doesn't really matter whether you're out wrestling him or not. He's quite creative and will produce something anywhere, whether he's on his back. A little bit like oh my goodness, me with names. Khabib's fighting.
Ferguson.
A little bit like Ferguson, really. Even if you were lucky enough to out wrestle someone like Ferguson, he's so creative off his back. It's like, what do you want to choose? Hot pan on open flame, or jump on some hot coals. Wherever you go, it's going to be difficult to deal with. It very reminds me of someone like that. He's good exciting to watch as well all the time.
He's another one as well where we knew he's outstanding on the ground.
Yeah.
But his striking was superb in this. He created different angles. He was inventive in the strikes he was attempting and he was hitting.
Yeah.
It was never Lee was unsure where they were going to come from, which was affecting his footwork. I had the first round as for Lee actually. 10-9 to Lee.
I had the same. Yeah, I had the same, but I never really felt like, although Lee, you definitely, I would agree with that, but he never looked comfortable. And I wasn't convinced he would be doing the same in any of the other rounds. We never really got to see far into the other rounds, obviously, but I think he just won because he's so athletic. I think that's the only reason why we saw him pull through. I just don't think he could have gone at that pace in the next two rounds.
The second round there, the round began actually. I'm going to go through this one because I was interesting.
Sure.
Because the second round, Lee's corner had said, really go to him, go with him, go with your power and move forward because he can't take your power. He wants to go to the ground. So Lee came out. He was trying to push forward. Oliveira straight away nailed him with a back fist. Lee fired back with a kick. And then Lee ate a couple of leg kicks. But he managed to get a nice right hand in. Then Oliveira went for a flying knee against Lee. And then Oliveira backed up Lee right up and he landed a series of right hands. Oliveira stunned. This is where he caught him with the right uppercut to the head, and he cracked him again then with another uppercut and a front kick to the face. And you could see that Lee was hurt then because he started to back away a little bit. He wasn't quite shaky, but he was backing away. He was covering up a little bit. So then Lee went for the takedown. Oliveira rolled it, goes for a few submissions. Oliveira gets up. Lee drags him back to the ground, but he attacks Oliveira with some ground and pound to finish the round, and then Lee postured up whilst attacking with more strikes to end the round. So Lee did get himself together a bit right at the end of the round, but I felt like it was a comfortable 10-9 for Oliveira.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and that was a good little rundown of what happened in the round.
Yeah, and I felt like the advice he had from the corner influenced obviously how he went about his business, but also influenced the fight because he got hurt. So then he went for the takedown. And then, of course, in the third round, it begins with Oliveira, who's now very confident, attacking Lee with a jumping front kick. Lee fires back with some strikes. He looks for a takedown, but Oliveira catches him in a guillotine and, he taps out. What did you think of he tapped out from the guillotine? And then when the ref stopped it, and then he went to take Oliveira's back after the fight had finished, and he seemed to be saying that he hadn't tapped.
Yeah,
and the referee said, watch the video. It was a weird one.
I actually think maybe he got put out momentarily, although you didn't see him go limp. I just don't think he had his faculties about him. I think he was a little confused. I don't think he was being cocky. I don't think he was trying to get away with it, because he actually tried to just straight away exchange. We see this when people get knocked out, that they think the fight is still on when it's flash knockouts. Yeah, exactly. I think it's a little bit of case of that. I think the choke was on and started making him drift out. And he tapped, but was unawares. It immediately went from his mind that he'd even done that. I just think he was that far out. We just didn't see him go limp. That gives us the suggestion it was that far gone. But I think he was. It's clearly a deep choke. You could see how deep it was. Completely clean. So I don't think there was anything untowards. I think it was genuine that he thought, he just thought the fight was carrying on. But when you look back at that, he can't argue it, and he won't argue it afterwards, I'm sure.
No, they said on the the post-fight thing that apparently he'd seen the video and he accepted it afterwards. But it was just in the moment, and he was a bit confused. That's the UFC Brasilia card. Overall, it was it was quite fun. There was a couple of duds, but they were all really interesting. Like even the Johnny Walker fight, it was it wasn't perhaps the fight that we were looking for from Johnny Walker in terms of entertainment.
We both had him down to win. The pair of us did. We were believing in all that he had done before. We thought he was going to do it again, but
Right. So before we move on to those questions, then we got a couple of questions. We'll have a look at the prediction chart. Obviously, I'm 1 up at the moment. We had I had Kevin Lee. So you had Charles Oliveira. So that's 1 for you. You had Gilbert Burns. That's 2 for you. Oh dear. And then we both had Damir Hadovich, so that's none for either of us.
Yeah, we both had Johnny Walker.
So that's none for either of us. And I had Trinaldo, so you won 2-1, which means we now go 1-1.
Yeah, neck and neck.
So obviously there's no UFC next week. Would you like to do predictions for the Cage Warriors show, or would you not? The only problem with that is I think
I have to have a little study on that.
Yeah, and plus I think we might end up going for the same fighters. So
probably so. Yeah, probably so.
I think
let's keep it to UFC ones.
UFC for the predictions. So let's finish off with some questions.
Okay.
What we got? So I'll start with this one because it's relevant to the last fight we talked about. Johnny wants to know, is Oliveira good enough to beat Khabib or Ferguson winner?
My goodness. I think that he's worthy of being in there with them. My money would be on Khabib or Ferguson to win if he was to face them. Doesn't mean that he can't grow into his skill set the longer he's in UFC to potentially beat them at some point. But I think Khabib's obviously such an extraordinary standout. No one's really showing up many chinks in his armor, or he's probably got the chinks in his armor, but he's so dominant with the wrestling that you've not got to see it. I'm sure that if he standed toe to toe and had to do an MMA striking round with some of these people in his division, he would lose, but he doesn't have to. He can just use the striking and then shoot in, and he's getting the results there. So for that fact, I just think my money would be on Khabib if he was to face him. And with Ferguson, I'm a massive fan of Ferguson. I just think he's a more prickly version of Charles. So I just think he's slightly better in every area than Charles at this stage. But like I say, I think Charles's style is a style that can has room to improve. He's very, very dangerous, and I just think he's going to become more dangerous over time. I think he's going to mature into his style very, very nicely, and then he could really be a contender to beat either of those two. It's possible.
Yeah, I'd actually I hope they don't throw him in to that. I think I'd rather him build up to it maybe next year or even
Agreed.
the end of next year. Let's give him, Dan Hooker and
yeah, exactly right.
There's a couple of good fights there. Paul Felder and
I mean, there's just so many really good fighters for him to fight.
Build him up.
Build him up. If he can beat these guys, I mean, that Paul Felder really impressed me. If he can beat the likes of those, and then absolutely worthy to step in against Ferguson or Khabib. But what, I suspect that Khabib, no matter what might happen in this, I've got a feeling he could well be retiring real soon. I don't mean to be a bit of a spoiler or to sound. I just got a feeling he ain't going to stay in it for the long haul. I don't think that's what I think. He's made his money. He's unbeaten. I think if he beats Ferguson, I think he might walk away. Be a bit sad, but he might well walk away.
I believe that he will want to beat McGregor again.
Right.
I just think that if he could finish, I think he's 28-0 now.
Yeah, that's right.
So if he beats 30-0, if he beats Ferguson, he'd be 29-0. They'll obviously offer him a great deal of money to face Conor because that's the big money fight for the UFC.
Yeah.
I think for him personally, if he could beat McGregor, go 30-0 and walk away, that's like the perfect end, if you like.
Yeah. He could well be right for that one because I think he would be very confident to beat Conor McGregor. Yeah. But as we've seen for Conor, I know we've seen him fight before, but you cannot write Conor McGregor off. And I think we saw a rusty Conor McGregor when he fought because he had been training predominantly boxing. Then he had some time out after that boxing match. So he fought an unbeaten legend boxer for his first ever boxing professional bout, which is crazy. And actually performed quite well in the big scheme. And then goes and fights, an unbeaten
with no training, no warm up,
no warm up fights. No, absolutely not. So,
and it showed as well, didn't it, that he hadn't had a warm up fight or anything.
That's
because
right.
He wasn't fighting his usual fight. It wasn't the normal Conor McGregor.
His striking just didn't look like it was on point that we have seen and like we see again just recently. I think when he's firing on all cylinders, this will make for a much more interesting bout between Khabib. So I mean, you could well be right with that. I think that's surprising if Khabib even beats Ferguson because
that's in that walkover.
My money is going to go on Ferguson for that. And let's get your prediction on that. Who would you go with?
I'm leaning on Ferguson as well. I think as dominant and just brutal as Khabib is, I'm just not sure that. I just think Ferguson's so unpredictable, and Ferguson could beat him from so many different ways. And he won't be that uncomfortable if Khabib's on top of him.
Yeah, I exactly agree. I think it's going to be a decisively different competition for Khabib for the fact that Ferguson can match him for cardio. And I think even outrun him with the cardio. So I think for the first time, you're going to see Khabib on the receiving end of deficit. Khabib's controlled the pace in every single fight. He's been the dominant force on how fast, how hard he's going to go. And of course, you're going to look good when you're controlling the pace so well and so easily. But what when something pushes back at you a little bit? What happens when you're wanting to take that little gasp for air and someone ain't going to give you it? I think that's we've not seen him tested, and I think for the first time we're going to see him tested. And I think because he's going to get tested for the first time, he's not going to experience that on the actual performance platform. He would have experienced it in training, of course, no doubt, but training is very, very different from experiencing in on the UFC defending your title. I think that's what's going to be the thing that he may respond brilliantly to it, but it's left as something that's unseen.
It's a question mark, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a question mark there. I got a feeling the inexperience of being on the receiving end of the of feeling fresh. I think that's going to see him break because his style is force orientated. He's not doing anything out the ordinary. He's not doing any kind of like big, massive uchima or hip throws. He's not doing anything particularly beautiful. He's just so
smothers him
clinically
and
good at he's so clinically good at it. Obviously got cat whisker sense of balance and how to take it away from you. There's no two ways about it. But it's an invisible thing that you can't see. You'd have to feel it to experience how good he is in that wrestling realm. But for the fact that, go on.
I was going to say, one thing I do think with Ferguson is I think Ferguson will have a plan for if Khabib takes him down and gets on top of him. Ferguson will have some sort of plan to try and like get a submission from underneath.
Yeah,
I've seen him do it a couple of times where he looks like he's in the prone position and his opponent's on top, and then all of a sudden, something's been a bit of wriggling and a bit of this and a bit of that, and he's done something completely out of the box thinking. I just think he'll have thought of things that maybe other people won't have. In terms of defense and offense, but you just don't know. You just don't know where it's going to go. So one of the other questions is, who would each of us put Conor versus next? So I'll let you go first.
Ooh.
Obviously, he can fight at any weight, any of the three weights.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is the thing with him, isn't it? He's so broad in his spectrum of potential weights that he's willing to fight at and prove to be effective at, being that he's got knockouts at 3 different divisions, which is incredibly impressive in his own right. I think I would want to see him go up against. I want to see him go up against another real good striker like Masvidal or maybe Geach. That would be, someone who's going to really take it to him with a barbaric type of striking, and to see whether he can come off effective against them. I don't want to see him up against a wrestler. I want to see him up against toe to toe against another real big banger who's going to really, try to do what he does to them. I think he tries to be pretty with it. He is all about setup and prep. He's looking, to create a chain of events because of one precision strike, and then he comes on strong. But yeah, they're two that I would pick.
So I've kind of got like 3 fights that I'd like to see from Conor, like obviously not including the Khabib fight. I'd like to see him face Justin Gaethje. I really want to see that fight. I'd really quite like to see him fight like a Paul Felder or a Dustin Poirier. But the other one I'd really like is Max Holloway. I think
because it was a long time ago. It was. That could be another really interesting matchup. There's so many options for McGregor, isn't there? So many.
Yeah, but they would kind of Matt Holloway and Gaethje are my kind of two, which I lean to. I think Poirier could be potentially good, but the problem I find with Poirier is that you don't always know who's going to turn up.
I'm not so interested in that one personally. That doesn't excite me as much.
But I honestly think he's going to have one fight, and then he's going to fight Khabib if he wins one fight. So that I can't see them giving him a Gaethje, because I think Gaethje's got the potential to beat him. So I think the UFC will give him Poirier, because Poirier's ranked number 2 behind Ferguson. Conor's number 3. So I think they give him Poirier. He'll beat Poirier comfortably, and then they can kind of legitimately say, right, Khabib versus Conor, or Khabib versus Ferguson. I think Khabib versus Ferguson versus Conor could be outstanding as well, I've got to say.
Oh, yes, that could. Yeah.
That could be an all-time classic. Okay, so a couple of kind of coronavirus-y type questions. It says, Danny, what are you and BST doing differently to minimize the risk of coronavirus finding its way to you, but also enabling fighters to keep training?
Well, we had to put a notice out for people to bring their own toilet rolls, just in case we can't acquire any. That was one of the issues that we had. I mean, there's things that go unknown about gyms, but gyms have toilets. People need the toilet when they're at the gym. So that was one thing that we had to address. We've obviously stocked up on lots of sanitizer, which gyms will always have anyway, but we knew that we'd probably be going through it more so than any other time. People are washing their hands even more. And basically, we got young lads that work for us. They're out on the field, so to speak, out in the gym, where people's hands are on all the equipment. They're getting cleaned down literally 24/7. There's a young lad out there constantly at it to try to combat it. I'm personally doing the mats. We've got a really big industrial machine that we do the mats with. We're just trying to be a little bit more diligent, and also giving small little prep talks on hygiene with the class formats as well, just encouraging people to make sure that they're extra clean before coming. If they are feeling unwell, not to come.
Just don't come.
The typical common sensical stuff. But I think possibly we're going to see the main chains, regards to just gyms like say Virgin and David Lloyd's and things like that. I think some of these will shut temporarily, but we're like a one-off gym, and we'll try and stay open as much as possible. Not that we want to encourage anyone catching anything by any stretch. We will always do what we have to do. If the government says we got to shut up, we got to shut up. As simple as that. But we are doing things to to make the environment as safe as possible. But right as it sounds, there's no one that seems to have had it. And until then, nothing changes. The numbers are a little bit down in the classes. It don't really affect us as a company, because obviously as a monthly subscription, unless people want to cancel their subscription in droves, which they probably won't do, because when we relocated, anybody who continued their contract with us would stay on the old package price, and for their loyalty. But anyone that cancelled and re-signed up on the new prices that we had to set to be in such a big complex, and bearing in mind we're in a complex this is 5 times bigger than the gym that we had before, which was also quite a big gym, but this is like 50,000 square feet. And I
can't wait to come see you.
Oh man, it'd be good to have you up there, and you'd be well looked after if you come up. It'd be good to actually spend face-to-face time together and get to know each other a little bit more. And a lot of the guys want to meet you. Obviously my students listen or watch the podcasts, and they're all keen to meet you too. If you ever do, I know this is a bit cheeky of me, but I'm going to put you on the spot. But it'd be really good if you got one of our top amateurs to come on, because they are going to be the future of MMA. And one of the ones who really conducts himself well, I really like to see what Hadi would have to say for himself. Real young lad, 21 years old, incredible striker. He hasn't really got to showcase his ground. He's defended his world amateur title on Battle Arena now, I think for the 3rd time now.
Okay.
It's a real talent, and conducts himself very well. He'd be a real good podcast. I think it'd be great to get some exposure, not just for my amateurs, but for any top amateur, to get some airtime, and to get these young opinions of how they see things too. I think it'd be really good.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I might do like a little mini series of like combat sports amateurs and that, obviously, because I got a couple of contacts up this way as well.
Yeah.
With the Cage Warriors guys and the UFC guys, so maybe we could put something together. I might remember for that. But yeah, I will, once this whole coronavirus thing starts calming down. I'll make a trip up there, and we could do a podcast in person as well. Maybe do it from the gym.
Oh, that'd be incredible. That'd be really good.
And as long I'll come up as long as I can get some interviews with the guys as well. I'm up there.
That'd be well keen.
Top man. So final question: should Cage Warriors 113 go ahead on Friday? And if so, should it be without the fans?
I think it should still go ahead, and I think it should go ahead with fans.
Controversial.
Yeah, but the only reason I say that is because I just don't. I think we're literally a week to 2 weeks away from it getting to the stage where you should stop all big gatherings. I'd say in 2 weeks' time now. I mean, I don't know. No one could have predicted this to happen in the first place, and it's going to be hard to predict what truly happens from here on out. But I would suggest that as more people do contract it, which is inevitable, to then shut it down and contain it more on a more serious level. But I don't think running an event a week from now is going to make any difference. I don't think any lives are going to be lost from it. It's highly unlikely anything's going to get spread from it. So I'd say, leave it at that. Maybe in a couple of weeks' time, I think big gatherings should be perhaps squashed for a period of time.
Fair enough. So, so guys, obviously there's no UFC next week. However, there's a Cage Warriors. I think it's likely that we're going to be doing the Cage Warriors watch along on the Friday. Obviously, but assuming it goes ahead, we'll be on air about 20 minutes before it starts. If for whatever reason we can't do the watch along, we will do a show on the weekend covering the Cage Warriors show as normal, like this. Obviously, if we do the watch along, then there'll be no podcast next week. But keep an eye on social media, because I'll confirm which way we're going to go. And obviously, join us in the live chat on the Friday if we do it. It'll be live on facebook.com/ACEcastNation and also youtube.com/ACEpodcastNation. If you could give us a subscribe on the YouTube channel, we're really trying to get towards those 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. That seems to be the hardest one to build up at the moment. We're sort of honing in on 9,000 on Facebook, but YouTube, I think we're around 700 still. So we're trying to get up to that 1,000 mark. So if you can give us a subscribe, youtube.com/ACEpodcastNation. Catch all our shows in video there. Obviously, all the audio versions of all the shows are available on all the normal radio and podcasting apps like Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and alike. You could check out bstacademy.co.uk. You could also got the code for Away Day Apparel for 10% off, all of which will be in the links underneath the show, as well as check out our Teespring store, which is teespring.com/stores/ace-cast-nation, I believe it is. But the link's in the description. And yes, Danny, thank you for joining me, my friend. I appreciate
thanks
it.
again, Si.
It's always a good time, my friend. I was thinking it would be quite a short show today. We haven't got that much to talk about, really. And we just get going and we just talk and talk.
Yeah, well, we had a bit to cover with with obviously
Corona.
This Corona.
Corona.
That took up a little bit of time. But I think it's only right that we spoke about it a little bit. And good question, by the way, whoever wrote that in. These gyms do have to keep trying to function at this stage, and we all got different measures that we'll do to keep the gym. So we're doing all that we can.
Yeah,
all
and the fact is,
possible.
If everyone keeps doing that wherever they are, whether it's work or home, and everyone keeps doing everything they can to keep things clean and to keep themselves clean, it's got less chance of spreading. I think it's people who don't take it seriously who are more likely to spread it, whether they don't wash their hands after they go to the toilet or they whatever it may be, just don't take it seriously. And I know there's a few who don't, but
it
is what it is.
It is.
Danny, it's a pleasure. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Defending champion